everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today at R.H.E. Podcast. Respect, humility, and empathy. Those are the three values that we talk about a lot as we try to talk about some serious topics and sometimes some funny topics. But today's topic is going to be a little bit more on the serious side. And I have a very special guest. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. My name's James Benbrook. I don't know. I'm just some schmo that likes talking about philosophy junk.
Well, before we get started, I want to have a friendly fire round with you. So I'm going to ask you some questions and just try to answer them as fast as possible. You ready?
Yeah, let's do this.
Okay. So if you had to be stuck in any decade for the rest of your life, what would it be? Me, it'd be the 90s, man. 80s or 90s.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's where I went to.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go with that. The lightning round. So sure. Yeah.
80s?
Yeah, 80s.
Best music, best movies ever. I don't know about the hair, but everything else is good. All right. How about this one? So if you got stuck on a deserted island, which movie star would you trust the most to be able to get you off of that island?
Movie star.
Yeah. Like action star.
You know, I kind of want to go with Tom Cruise just because I know he does a lot of that insane stuff, but I don't know how much I'd be able to tolerate his presence.
Right. And he got off of in Castaway. He was able to get off of the island. So that was probably a good call. All right. There we go. What about your favorite alcoholic beverage?
Whatever happens to be in my hand right now.
Which
It's
is
this Founders Bottle Shop Series Nemesis.
Founders. Okay. And how about this one? How do you take your coffee?
Black.
Black. If the devil had a favorite band, what would it be? I got you.
Leonard Skinner.
Leonard Skinner. All right, I like them. All right. So before we get started, we always like to ask our guests if you could tell us, like, are you familiar with the Dawkins Scale from like 1 to 7?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. So where would you place yourself from 1 being like a Gnostic theist and a 7 being a Gnostic atheist and a 4 just being a dead set agnostic?
Well, I don't think the Dawkins Scale incorporates Gnosticism, but I don't think you're completely off base to apply that term. I kind of like where Dawkins puts himself, like a 6.9. 6.9. I'm probably like a 6. I'm probably between a 6 and a 7.
Okay, that's a 6.5. So just to clarify something, when we say Gnostic, it means that you have knowledge of something. So you could be a Gnostic Christian, or a Gnostic theist means you have knowledge that God exists, but it would be pretty dang impossible to be a Gnostic atheist, which is why Dawkins won't even call himself a hard 7. So a Gnostic just means you have knowledge of something, whereas agnostic, you could say I'm an agnostic atheist, means I don't believe that there's a God, but I don't think it's likely. Okay, that being said, could you really quickly tell the audience how you and I met? I think that's a good starting point.
I was feeling brave one night, and I hopped on the Religion and Politics server on Discord. And I was in some room. Otangelo, who is kind of infamous in the circles that I read about things and hear from people. And he was in there and he posed a really interesting question. So I said, hey, Otangelo, I'd love to be able to chat about this. The room was kind of getting rambunctious, and I suggested, hey, let's talk somewhere where there's less distraction. He sent me a link to a video chat thing that surprised me, but I clicked on it and was like, sure, let's do this. I didn't know he was recording, so I think if you actually go and click on that thing, like for the first 20 minutes, I'm just sitting there rambling like an idiot because my audio wasn't working. Yeah, but it was an interesting discussion until someone else hopped into the room, and I don't know, I felt like he had an agenda. I don't think he liked what I was saying or how I was saying it. Yeah. And there may be valid criticism there, but I don't know.
Well, so a couple of things. One is, if you were not aware that you're being recorded, I actually had something like that happen to me, and like the next day, it just appeared online, and I was like, wow, I didn't know I was being recorded on this, but I guess he found out part of the way through. But that's just a very dishonest way of engaging people. First of all, let's just say that one. Second of all, I happened to come in, I guess, about an hour and a half in, and I was listening for about 10 minutes, and the guy was just trashing you. Like, I mean, he even dropped some F-bombs on you. I couldn't believe that, because this guy's a Christian. I'm a Christian. I'm in there and I'm listening to him. And I tell him, like, this is not right. Like, you should not be talking to people like this. This is not right. And then he turned that on to me. He called me, I guess, a soy boy. Is that what you said?
That was my recollection. I can't stand to listen to myself talk, so I can't go
Soy
back
boy.
and listen to that recording much.
Well, I definitely want to thank you for coming on. And we have like a kind of a serious topic today, which is that of death and dying. And there's a lot of uncertainty. So as we talk about this, we're trying to take it as far as we can with using humility, because this is one of the letters that we have. First of all, it's just so apologize for those people. That's like not the way is. I would not want to be treated like that. So if I see a Christian doing that, I saw Darth Dawkins doing that to someone, and I did confront them because that's just not right. And that's definitely not the conversation we're going to have today. I can guarantee you that. So if you don't have a really good answer to these questions, don't feel like you need to answer them. These aren't gotcha questions. Some of them might be a little bit rough, especially if you're a pretty hard atheist, which it sounds like. So if any of these make you uncomfortable, just feel free to skip. Okay, you ready?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. First question is: does it make sense to fear death?
No, I think honestly, my position on that question, my answer is no, because if I'm dead, then I'm not me, or I'm not active, I'm not aware, I'm not conscious, I can't process anything, I'm not a part of the equation. Kind of like how before I was born, to me, it's kind of like the same thing. But there's a lot attached to that. Certainly that we live in a temporal world. The whole pain of loss when you're not the one who's died, someone else has. Being able to provide for somebody else,
right,
or have connections with someone else, that the fear of loss, I think that's a real thing. I don't know if necessarily that can be conflated with the fear of death or just lumped in with it, but fear of death proper, no.
So recently I interviewed a disabled rapper. He has a cerebral palsy. Really good episode. And because he had a lot of philosophical thoughts, but they're just kind of like from someone from that's on the street, not very polished, but just very real, very real street knowledge stuff. And he was talking about that. He was saying, well, how he didn't have any kids. So he's like kind of like my idea about the future is it doesn't really matter because there's nothing I could have done to stop World War I or World War II. And whenever I'm not here, I'm not going to be able to solve any of the problems. So he's like, I really don't care. It's kind of like a nihilistic thought he had. But I mean, that being said, yeah, have you ever considered that other little small percentage where you might be wrong? Kind of like if you would have chosen the wrong thing, then whatever consequences might result as that from that.
You mean pick the wrong religion?
Or not religion, right?
Sure. Let's say the Mormons got it right.
Like
the humorous South Park scenario, and all the other Christians were wrong, and if you weren't a Mormon, if you didn't abide strictly by the whole Mormon faith, then you were the one going to hell. Yeah. You can play that game all day. Well, what if this one's right? Well, what if that one's right? Sure, I'd love to entertain the fact, or explore it, or at least come to some reason why maybe this isn't true because of this, or even if they're not even airtight reasons. But I would err on the side of science. I would need to put the burden of proof where it needs to rest.
So, okay, that's fair. And so do you, is this something that just doesn't cause you to lose sleep over? Is that reason?
I've definitely lost sleep over it in the past. I mean, these are big questions
Yeah,
with absolutely huge repercussions.
Right.
But I don't lose sleep over it every night. I mean,
right.
My brain's only so big. I can only hold so much in it.
Right. There's, I heard this epic debate between, are you familiar with William Lane Craig?
Yeah.
And he got into debate with a guy named Frank Zimler. Are you familiar with him?
No.
Anyway, Frank Zimler says, he's kind of like, I mean, getting down to science, he's like, well, what if I designed a science experiment that said, well, you know, within the next 5 minutes, God's going to strike me dead right now. And this guy's an atheist, right? So he says, well, if God doesn't strike me dead right now, it doesn't mean that he doesn't exist. But if he does strike you down with a lightning bolt, that's a pretty good indication, you know, likely he does exist. But he says, you know, like, first of all, it's so funny because he said after he said it, he goes, now I'm relatively certain that's not going to happen. You know, obviously leaving open the possibility that God does exist and strikes him down at the time. But it just, I guess, kind of the same situation where if you're being required to make an investment of your time, of your life, of your energy, of your money, you're saying you want to be able to prove it scientifically. I think you're somewhat of you have a background in science, correct?
I'm an engineer.
Engineer, okay. Science, all right. So yeah, I get that, okay. And so you do not have any kids yourself, is that correct?
That's correct. My girlfriend has a couple that I've been spending a lot of time with.
Does a belief often comfort loved and lost ones? What do you think about that?
Unquestionably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to add to that?
I suppose. It's a comfort the same way that a kid believes Santa Claus is real. I don't want to demean it, but I totally just did. If you believe in something and you take comfort in that belief, well, then the belief is comforting.
Right.
But that has no bearing on whether or not the belief is true.
Right. Yeah. Of course. I did nothing in that question implied any kind of ability or belief. But I actually had a conversation with one of my co-hosts. His name is Sid, aka Sid Vicious. But I asked him if he ever saw the movie Life is Beautiful. Have you ever seen that movie?
I haven't.
Are you familiar with it's probably the oddest genre movie ever. It's like a comedy about the Holocaust. It's an Italian movie. But it's like not, yeah. It came out like in the 90s, I think. But anyway, so this guy, he goes to, it's an Italian movie, but he gets put into a concentration camp and he gets stuck there with his son, and he kind of like convinces his son that they're in some kind of reality game show and they're trying to win a tank. And so the son actually believes it. Yeah, it's a really intense movie. It's definitely a tearjerker. But like it's a dark comedy. So for example, one time he's in a car and the car loses its brakes and they wind up plowing through some like bushes, and so the car has all kinds of like leaves and stuff on it, and there's this crowd there waiting, and he's telling them, he's like, move, get out of the way, move. And they're all think that he's like saluting them, so they're all standing there and they're saluting him and stuff. It's a pretty funny. I mean, it's a dark comedy, so it's like it's a very hard. It's not making light at all about the Holocaust, but it's trying to, yeah. Anyway, so you know, I asked him what he thought about that. About let's just assume God doesn't exist, and it's a pretty harsh reality to think that you're being flung into the universe with thousands of miles an hour into nothingness, and that's the only thing that awaits you is just a death and you losing your teeth and your hair. Well, I've already lost my hair, but this is where it's like, okay, here's my opinion on this. It's like, if you are an atheist, that's fine. That's fine. You don't have faith. You don't have belief. If you want to keep it to yourself, then I understand that. But when you want to go and invade something that is causing someone else comfort, right? That, to me, in my opinion, and you may, I'll ask you your opinion on this, it seems like you shift the burden of proof onto yourself, because now you're going after someone's belief. Like, I don't really understand why people would do that in the first place. It's like, why would you attack something that gives someone comfort? What are your thoughts on that?
If someone's belief system is informing their actions in a way that is infringing upon other people's rights, then other people going after them for their belief system, I think, is a natural reaction. Maybe not that reaction not being applied in the most effective means, but I don't think it's unheard of or surprising.
Right. So let me add a little bit of context here, because if you're talking about someone trying to use their faith to take away people's rights or do hate speech and stuff like that, then we're exactly on the same. We are on the same footing there. Okay, but I'll say this. Okay, so I have a daughter. If my daughter died and I were to find out that God doesn't exist somehow, I don't know how I'd become a Gnostic atheist, but if I were, I'd rather believe a lie. Because I don't think I would be able to function, I really don't. Now, we have interviewed a guest, and his son, I hypothetically threw out a situation like, if your son died or something, he's like, well, my son did die. And I was like, oh God. And he's like, and I really wish I would see him again. It's like, but I just don't believe that. And I think I'd be dishonest. He's like, I raised my son to be honest. So believing that is not like in the cards for me. So I'm like, well, I respect that. Oh, by the way, what kind of dog you got back there?
That's my girlfriend's border collie.
Collie, yeah, there's a collie. So yeah, so it's like, if you're dealing with someone, okay, like, and they've lost a child, and you do not have any proof that we don't have souls, like, why would you want to go and try to take away someone's faith that might cause them collapse? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Oh, I agree completely. I've had conversations like this with my mom. I think she agrees with you. If she has a belief that she's going to meet her loved ones, like her brother,
Mm-hmm.
In the afterlife, I mean, that's something she absolutely grasps onto.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't want to attack that just
Mm-hmm.
because it's
my aunt just died this week, actually.
Sorry,
So it's my mom's sister.
I think you mentioned that earlier.
Yeah. So far, it's like, which is horrible. My grandmother outlived 2 of her daughters. And speaking of that, so she outlived my mother and then her older sister, and then maybe about 4 years ago, my grandmother finally died, and then now her either the third or fourth daughter. I don't know off the top of my head, but yeah. So anyway, what Sid said in our discussion is that, like, regardless of what you and I believe, like, we're going to experience the same kind of things in life. He described it very nice. He's like, things are going to start getting sore. We're going to start losing things, whether it's our teeth, loved ones, and we're going to experience the same thing. So it's like, it's not as though being a believer like takes away all the pain and suffering you're going to have. You still experience those things, but we draw from a source of comfort. So that being said, I want to ask you another question. Do you think that suicide is ever a viable option?
Yeah. In the same way that euthanasia is a viable option for pets.
I live in Asia, right?
Yeah, I think you mentioned that.
Yeah. And when I was in high school, my teacher said, "What do you think about euthanasia?" And I was like, "Well, I think euthanasia are the same in youth in Europe or youth in America." So that is literally my response. That's not even a joke. That was like literally my response. But yeah, so okay, so euthanasia. I gotta say this. I don't really understand why Christians would be against that. I really don't. But
The only reason I can think of is when it's your time, God will make it so, or something to that effect. But the other thing that I can think of is it's just, on the face of it, it's morbid. It's hard to understand. To walk into a courtroom or Congress and then propose, hey, I want people to have the ability to kill other humans, but like in a sanctioned and acceptable way. I don't know. I feel like for a lot of people in a particular mindset, that's a hard sell.
Do you remember that Dr. Kevorkian guy who was doing that some years back? Like just like over 20 years ago.
The name is familiar.
They called him Dr. Death.
Yeah, the character on The Simpsons is even more familiar to me. So was that why he was famous? Because he was basically creating an avenue where people could do that?
Well, infamous, I think would be the correct word to use, but as famous kind of implies something positive. He is notorious. I mean, I have to look it up right now. But yeah, well, I would say he assisted. And I do believe, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong. Because I did go to school in Oregon, and I believe that is the only state that allows that physician assist. I like physician assisted suicide, the title of that better. So in that sense, I think if you're a compassionate person and you can understand, like someone's not going to recover, there's no option, and they're just really hurting. It's the same thing like with the dog, like putting a dog down. Or this podcast actually sponsored someone who we met through the podcast. Their service dog is 17 years, had cancer or something, was in a lot of pain. So we actually helped to put the dog down and get it cremated and put in ashes and everything for the guy. So he was very appreciative. But it's the same exact concept. It's like, what's the point if someone's just going to be suffering? And
yeah,
I mean, I've heard stories where people, like they had this cancer and they were gonna wind up draining all their family's money, so they just put a shotgun to their head and just blew it off. So it's like, that's not really a ethical thing if you're putting someone that's an option that they're gonna have, that they would take.
There's some interesting scientific questions on like what is the most humane way. I don't know. Maybe I was just a morbid little kid, but I kind of wrestle with the question, like, what would be the most painless and quickest and humane way? Just because, you're growing up, you see it, like other pets, other people suffering through things. It's like, if I was in this situation, or if someone really close to me was in this situation, like what is the best? My grandmother was my mother's mother. She basically just towards the end there just lost the will to live. Would just sit in her little home and just eat all the foods that the doctor said, do not eat this stuff. This will kill you. So she just went to town on it, and just repeated doctor's visits, and just strung out. And I even had conversations with her. I was too young to really understand the full ramification of it, but I was having conversations with her about it. I just think if someone is of sound mind, and I guess not necessarily body in this situation, to make the decision that, hey, my time is done here.
Yeah.
I think it is overstepping their rights, their ability to be in control of their life, to tell them, no, you have to continue to live.
Right. Especially like if you're a Christian, you believe in free will. And to me, and I don't know, I may be on a more liberal persuasion as far as this goes, but that one, I'm definitely more liberal on. Now, the idea of like an able-bodied person killing themselves or being assisted in that, I definitely wouldn't favor that. But because I think if you're trying to kill yourself, I mean, clearly you believe that there's no hope. You know, I don't know, I'm sure if you've ever gone through depression, but the hardest thing about depression, because everybody goes through dark periods in their life, you know, like every Christian, any human being, I mean, having fame and riches and money, that's not going to insulate you to the troubles of life, you know, it's not. And if you think it is, just look at Lincoln Park, just look at that Anthony Bourdain,
Owen Wilson.
Who?
Owen Wilson. He attempted suicide at one point.
Really? I didn't know that. But yeah, so it's like everyone goes through that. But when you get to the point where you cannot see, like literally cannot see a light, even if it's just a little dot in the background, a light at the end of a tunnel, and all you see is tunnel for miles and miles on end, that can be virtually impossible to get through, you know?
Yeah.
So
if the light exists, that decision should be taken away from a person?
That's what I'm saying. I was drawing a distinction there. Someone who has attempted suicide, I digested like 150 sleeping pills, and I went to sleep, and I woke up the next day just with the most unbelievable headache. Oh my God. I mean, I had to spend literally like 3 days in the hospital. I had to drink charcoal for like 3 days or whatever. It's absorbs it or whatever. But yeah, I was definitely, at the time that it happened, I was not in my right state of mind. It was like a manic psychotic episode. So yeah, the cops did have to come, and a couple of days later, you know, kind of like regained my thinking abilities, you know. So I believe first of all that mental health issues need to be totally destigmatized, you know, because I'm Mexican. I can tell you, growing up, that was like one of the biggest digs you could take at someone, like, oh, you need counseling, oh, you need help, man, like, you know what I mean, you need professional help. Like, okay, yeah, I sought professional help even after being a Christian, and it helped me, and there's no shame in that. And
it's limited to just, you know, ethnicism or anything. I think that's prevalent regardless of the culture. I agree with you. That's something that should be destigmatized.
You're right, but it's like then you got to throw in the machismo-ness on top of that. So it's like you can't show emotions, period. You can't show weakness, period. If someone insults your mom, you got to fight them. It's just like that, you know. There's rules. So yeah, yeah. So I think the destigmatization, we need to do that as a society and make sure that mental health resources are more readily available, because it can be very much out of people's reaches sometimes, you know. So
no, it's interesting you say that. I would like to comment on that, and
sure.
I hope this isn't too much of a tangent. When you say like in these cultures, like there's these rules, and like in terms of suicide, one of the things that was going in the back of my mind was like the whole warrior culture thing. Because obviously in war, you're going to encounter situations where like, okay, this is an injury you're not going to come back from, or there's a situation where you've carried so much shame, the only way you can regain your honor is ritualistic suicide.
In Japan.
In Japan, yeah. In situations like that, I don't know if it's because I'm an action movie junkie or something, but I get it and I accept it and I don't question it. And I don't know if that's a failing on my part or if that somehow feeds into my thoughts on suicide being a viable option, because I look at that and I think, I get it. And I just move right on. You know what I mean?
It's so yeah, this could turn into a giant this could turn into a giant tangent right here. But I will say this, because I live in South Korea, and because South Korea has been brutalized by Japan, I'm a little bit disinclined to appreciate the word for it is harakiri, where they do a ritualistic suicide, but they also do that with they're also doing that with the kamikazes, and yeah, it's a I'm gonna have to resist not going down this one. There's a lot I have to say on this one. But anyway, that being said, this one's going to be, I think, right up your alley. This question is, what are your thoughts on transhumanism? And if someone's not out there, if you could, if someone doesn't know what that means, would you mind explaining that? So I think you're a tech guy.
I had to look this up when you sent this question to me. My understanding of the whole transhumanism thing is basically incorporating outside technology into the human condition. So using technology to expand our emotional capability, our intelligence, our ability to think and process, or even physical capabilities. My girlfriend brought up an interesting person that's crap. It was last night. Now it totally escapes my mind.
Timothy Leary.
Was that
Timothy Leary?
No, it was Ray. Starts
Comfort.
with a K. Not Comfort.
No, that's a joke. That's a joke.
I think he talks more about bananas than anything else. No, but so my thoughts on transhumanism. I'll be honest. My immediate thought was, ew. What's wrong with the human body the way it is? Like, it's natural. Like, what are you going to shove like electronics into it? Like, we don't need that. We're operating just fine as it is. And then I would read things like Elon Musk saying, oh yeah, this is the future. This is definitely going to be a thing. Say what you want about Elon Musk. The man's crazy, but he's one of those future thinkers. But the idea...
He's 50 years ahead of his time is what it is. That's a problem.
He might be.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think he's crazy at all.
The idea of expanding our capabilities, I hesitate to say whatever that pathway may be is worth pursuing.
So as it is already, there's already exoskeletons that can like help people walk and stuff. So technically speaking, someone like that would be like a cyborg, even though it's not what we really think of when we think of like a cyborg. We think of them having some kind of like half breeds. It's going in that direction. It is going that direction. But sure. Another thing that is interesting that has the potential to make people immortal is to be able to upload your conscious into like a cloud or something. So I'm not sure. Did you ever see the movie Transcendence with Johnny Depp? No.
I don't think I did.
Johnny Depp, and he had a really hot girlfriend, and I can't remember her name. Yeah, she's insanely hot, but that's neither here nor there. But do you ever watch Black Mirror?
Yeah.
Okay. So did you ever see the episode, which is arguably, I would say, within definitely the top 3, but a lot of people say it's the best episode, but it's called San Junipero?
I did not watch that one.
Okay. I don't want to give away spoilers, but they're able to upload consciousness into like a cloud in that. Do you think it would be possible to make someone immortal in that sense, that you could take the, like, I don't know, with scans or monitoring their brain waves or whatever, that you'd be able to do that?
The big question.
Yeah.
It sounds like the transporter problem from Star Trek.
Which is what?
Well, in Star Trek,
I'm not a nerd, so I don't watch that.
That's fair enough.
You're like a science junkie.
In Star Trek, they've got this transporter where they can beam people from one location to another. And being Star Trek, they sort of expand on this in like this techno babble kind of nonsense. But the idea is this transporter being like breaks you down into a tiny billion, trillion, gazillion pieces, sends you via light to a different location, and then reassembles it. So aren't you technically dying every time that happens? And you're reassembled, but is that technically you? How do you know your soul follows you in the transition? Like, do you know like that's actually the same person, or is it just like a facsimile? If you keep doing it over and over, do you lose something in the translation? Or even if you can do it 100%, can you still ensure that you get everything right in the transference? So the idea of immortality, the idea of capturing I mean, maybe in a sense, but there's no way to ensure that what that person thinks, feels, experiences, like that is necessarily the thing that transfers over.
So
there's all sorts of tests you could perform to say that they could think, feel, act, or whatever the exact same way. But that there's that X element. I don't know. Maybe that unquantifiable thing. That how do you ensure it?
Yeah, because I mean, this is kind of like part of the problem that happens in transcendence. Johnny Depp's consciousness gets uploaded to computer, and so it's like, but at the same time, it's like, because his consciousness is on there, he can't physically move stuff, so he can't even have sensations, you know. So it explores that element. I mean, it's really interesting. You know what, I do want to say something. It's probably about 15, maybe around 15 years ago. Yes, 15, 20 years ago. I was watching like a documentary on trying to extend the human life. And what they were saying on there was that by the year 2015, like the people born in 2015, my daughter's born in 2017, 2018. But the people born like right now, so the children, the infants, they're going to have life expectancy like of 200 years, because a lot of the between stem cells and eradicating, you know, various types of diseases and kind of cell rejuvenation stuff that they're working on, the technology that they're projecting. Because if you think about, if you just look back a couple hundred years ago, like living at 40 would be like a full life, right? So now it's like, it's possible we've not only doubled that, but it's people have lived to like 115, 16, 17 years old. So extending that out another 80 years to be like an average life, that's not even that big of a deal if you think about how much technology has grown over the last 100 years, you know? So that's an interesting concept, that reason why people are so, either way, they're afraid of death, you know? And they're afraid of death. You want to cheat death in some way. So speaking of that, this gets to my next question I want to ask you is, how can we maximize our time while we're alive?
I suppose that depends on what you think is the most worthwhile thing to pursue. I'd say a large portion of my life, the answer that I would hear most often to a question like this would be to give back to the community, help others, live a selfless life kind of thing. I have perhaps grown more cynical in the past 5 years. Not a fan of, what's that?
Can you elaborate?
Sure. I'm not a fan of the direction that America has been going in. There's huge division over insert topic. It could be anything, but the big ones are race and politics, just
religion too.
Group ideology. There seems to be maybe it's always been there and now it's just coming more to light, but I didn't realize how many people honestly thought a certain way.
Right.
Like, honestly thought like our race is in jeopardy and we need to subjugate the other races more.
Right.
I'm speaking of white supremacism in that instance. Or if you call yourself a Republican nowadays, then that's just like carrying a target on your back, or like you must be an idiot, or that kind of thing.
Can I ask your political persuasion?
I've always said I've taken like tests online, and stuff, and they always come back saying, wow, you're pretty damn like in the middle. A lot of people say they're right down the middle, but it's hard not to be left of center nowadays.
Yes. So if I were to put myself on a political spectrum, I would say it's like 55-45 leaning left, because to think in extremes, like those are actually the most dangerous elements, the extreme on either side. They're dangerous, or the people who think that we should impose this, or we have to get our way 100% of the time. Like that is, this, you can't get your way inside of it with married or with a girlfriend. Like you just can't. You can get your way sometimes. You have to watch some chick flicks every now and again. I've come to that conclusion. You have to. I'll force my wife to watch some action movies, but you gotta every now and again watch some chick flicks. That's just a part of being married. This is just so you know, this is part of what we're doing with the podcast, is that just sitting down and having conversations, because I could say I disagree with you on a lot of things. I'm sure the more we talk, the more we find things that we disagree with, but that doesn't mean that I can't respect you and say that had I not experienced what you'd experience, I would see things exactly from your perspective. I've had different experiences in my life. Speaking of being Gnostic, I'm a Gnostic believer. I had an experience with Jesus Christ. I wasn't a believer. I experienced Jesus Christ. He changed my life. And if with my faith, it's like it's a Gnostic experience, but I wouldn't want to go around and try to bash other people's beliefs, something I think that might damage them. We want to have some conversations. I'm fine if we want to challenge some beliefs, but to go in and just try to come in like a wrecking ball to someone's beliefs, like I don't think it's right, in my own personal opinion. But we can't challenge each other but still be respectful. So what do you think about that?
The person that was in the room that went after us both, when you say wrecking ball, like that's what I picture. But honestly, thoughtfully challenging beliefs, presuppositions, I crave that kind of thing, probably to a degree that most people don't realize, and because I want to be checked. If I believe a certain thing, if I'm going down a certain path, I want someone to say, like, you really think that's the right thing to do? Why is that? You really think that's how it is? What's feeding that thought process?
Yeah.
I want that check. I want to be able to, I want another person's viewpoint.
So I do want to. So then if that's the case, I would like to insert a couple of questions right here, specifically about God and science, and then we'll get back to the other few that I have here. But it's kind of a weird thing that a lot of Christians tend to shy science, or think it's like an enemy of faith. I don't really see it that way at all. But if you believe in science, like kind of like scientism, where like we're going to look to science to solve, it seems like almost every problem out there. What are your thoughts on, like, does it not cause you some kind of cognitive dissonance in the conversations that you were having, where it's like, you really got to believe that all this just came about by absolute chance for billions of years to get us here to where life could evolve for billions of years? That seems pretty unlikely. And I even heard you, I was listening to it again, and you were saying that's a pretty unlikely scenario, So what do you think about that?
I don't think scientism is really the right term. I use science because so far science is the best tool I've come across. If I come across a better one, I'm going to use that. In terms of feeding what I understand about how everything in the universe has come to be, science has so far been a very reliable tool in arriving at whatever I happen to accept about what I understand of the origin of the universe. or evolution, or how different species have come about on this planet. I mean, being able to like analyze DNA and determine how everything is related, like the canine family or the feline family, and how they would relate to other mammals, and how they would relate to eukaryotes, and how it just goes all the way back to a single-celled organism. I mean, there's a lot that fed into that model, and why they think, yeah, we think we got a pretty good idea that this is how things went down. I'm not saying, cool, I will now believe this 100%, this is how things went down. I just think, well, this is the model that we have. We could discover something tomorrow that completely blows the model apart. And that's
Right.
fine. Great.
That's nice. Are you familiar with Ricky Gervais?
Yeah. Wow.
So you love him?
Well, yeah, he's got a terrible laugh, but other than that, he's awesome.
Any chance you ever saw The Invention of Lying? That movie is hysterical. I mean, that movie is insanely funny, but that's got to be one of the definitely top 10 funniest movies I've ever seen. But anyway, he's in that. It's like it's a future or something. It's a world where no one can lie, and then he accidentally invents lying one day. He causes all of these, and actually he winds up like becoming a god as like a result of it. It's pretty freaking funny. But so I do want to say that he was having interview with Stephen Colbert, who's a Catholic, and Gervais said, well, look, if we took all the holy books and we destroyed them all, and we took every science book and we destroyed them all, he says it would be the science that would come back 50 years from now. We'd rediscover the science exactly the same that it was. And I thought that was a really compelling point. But on the other hand, there's some pretty significant gaps in there that are still out there. Like, okay, so if I was going to believe in science over believing in God, one thing that would cause me the greatest amount of cognitive dissonance, which would be to say the scientists, the models that we have right now, cannot account for 90% of the Milky Way galaxy. So if I were to have like if I were to have a model that was able to account for 90%, and then there's this little 10% that we can't account for, like I'd be like, all right, yeah, I could go with that. But when you have only you can only account for 10% of the matter, I guess one of the things is that are you familiar with what I'm talking about? Because
you're talking about the problem with dark matter,
and it just the way that the speed in which the Milky Way is spinning, like it should be ejecting the stars out. So there's something holding it, and then also how it bends some light and stuff. So it's a pretty, it's not nearly as set as some scientists and some cosmologists would like to make it seem. Like we got to solve some pretty big stuff before we're going to say, okay, this is more reliable than I think, that this was not created somehow. Even like me, like I believe in the Big Bang, I believe in evolution, I believe in all that, but I just, for the life of me, do not see that scenario going down without someone pushing it over, without some kind of, I don't know if you're an engineer. I was listening to the discussion you're having. I don't see that. You might see that. Maybe you understand engineering, and maybe a biologist would be able to buy that, but I just trying to, whatever I find, like it would be like a very big jump. Like I would have an easier time believing that it got created rather than this just came about randomly, you know, personally.
In a lot of ways, it takes away a lot of the mystery to say, well, it just got put there. Everything that we've looked into in our world, I mean, we've learned more, we've gone deeper, we've understood more, we've applied more, you know, and that's that goes with like any scientific field,
right?
You know, biology, geography, all of it.
Yeah.
To believing science over religion, just believing science at all. That you said you believe in the Big Bang and you believe in evolution. I would not use those words. I would say I accept the evidence that leads to the conclusions of the Big Bang and evolution being the most reasonable model presented so far of how things got to where they are now. If our current models don't necessarily account for all of the things that we're observing in the Milky Way, well, I'm not I'm not the least bit surprised. The Milky Way is pretty flippin' massive. It's like 100,000 light years from one end to the other. And yeah,
Well,
I'm not moved by it. I'm moved by evidence.
so you're
Like,
familiar with Carl Sagan? Carl Sagan?
Yeah, absolutely.
So just in his lifetime, he was saying that the Milky Way was only 30,000 light years across, and that made sense for him at the what?
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
So scientists say that there's between 100 billion and 400 billion stars in our galaxy, in the Milky Way. And it's like, I try to say this, like, if you met someone online and they're like, well, I'm between the age 25 and 100, like, would you take that risk to go and try to talk to them, you know? So it's like, there's still some, if we can't even tell you like where we are in relative position, and even this actual shape of the Milky Way, like that's another thing that if you really get down to how they're mapping out the stars in there, because as they say, like, you can't see the forest from the trees, we can see perfectly other galaxies because we have telescopes that can see out to the shape of, you know, other galaxies. But because we can't escape like our galaxy, or I guess we'll be able to do it at some point, but we'd have to get like a bird's eye view. And so there's some like you know, science in general, we might discover that our ideas or our methods are not at all accurate. Like maybe they're accidentally discovering some stuff or accounting for things, but we might discover a better model. You know what I mean? Like, and here's just a quick example. Like, it used to be thought that the Earth couldn't be spinning because if we drop a boulder from a tower, like, it would stand to reason that the boulder would not land in the same spot if you're spinning, right? But they weren't accounting for, they didn't understand inertia, the atmosphere, et cetera, et cetera. So in the same way, in 200 years from now, like, let's say even an advanced society came and said like this, they would just be laughing at our technology, you know, because, or even our models. So that's the thing. And I'm not discounting anything about science. I think it's amazing. Christians should really bask in the vastness of the universe and the billions of light years and the CMB, how they're studying it and how they see it stretch out, and they can trace all this stuff. I mean, I think it's fascinating, but I wouldn't worship science the way that I think a lot of atheists do. But anyway, that being said, I want to ask you another question. Do you think that it's possible for soul to like evolve and become some kind of emergent property from our bodies or our consciousness? What are your thoughts on that?
When I grew up with a religious mother. And I totally latched on to the idea of like, okay, God, Jesus, souls, afterlife. But my take on that was that, whether it was right or wrong, was that if anything, the body was dependent on the soul, not the soul being dependent on the body. So if the soul could be the emergent property, then the soul would be dependent on the body. And to me, that seemed backwards. You know what I mean? Do I think the soul could be an emergent property? I'm inclined to say no. But I like the idea of it. I would like to explore it. I wonder if that's the case. I was talking about the transporter problem,
Right.
that X element. Well, what if that's the X element? What if there's something there that is missing from the duplication or the transfer?
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Do this honestly, okay, so let's just assume that I didn't believe in God, and I did believe in evolution. I believe in evolution and the Big Bang apart from God. This would not be something I would totally discount, because obviously whatever kind of consciousness we have, the relationship between the mind, it's somehow able to affect like reality out there, even at the quantum level, right? When you look at some of the experiments that they've done, you ever heard of the quantum double eraser experiment?
No, I don't think I have.
I mean, oh, so you're familiar with the double slit experiment, right?
Yes. Yeah.
This one is like 10 times more insane than that. I mean, you really did this, and this one's mind-boggling, baffling to a different extent, because what they did is they try to outsmart these particles that they were shooting, right? So what they did is they designed this really intelligent way to like break it up and use entangled particles, and they were bouncing it around because they knew that if you just shoot it directly into there and then you're observing it, they know what they're going to experience, right? The wave patterns.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you don't observe it, you're going to see the wave patterns. But if you observe it, you just see it directly, correct? So
okay.
What they said is, okay, well, let's not look at the first one, and what we're going to do is we're going to bounce them around these other different ways, and then we'll observe it later on, and then we'll see what happened here at the beginning, right? This is really simplified. You're gonna have to look at the YouTube videos, but essentially what happened is when they found out, and I'm going to say they had to have been conscious, the particles, because they were able to somehow send a message back in time. They're like, oh, hey, they're tracking us, man. We got to go back and we got to start behaving like the regular way again, like where it's just straight, you know? It's fascinating. I mean, it's fascinating. I mean, literally, and the scientists, all the scientists I heard interviewed on this, they said, if anybody can explain this, there's an instant Nobel Prize with your name on it. But so anyway, but we have that our conscious is somehow affecting things to the quantum level, right? Would you agree with it?
I have absolutely no knowledge in this area. I can't say if I agree or not.
So I just think there has to be some kind of deeper relationship that with the mind and the consciousness that I simply don't think that we fully understand. I got to say honestly.
I'm on board with that.
Because
I will say this. I did martial arts when I was younger.
Yeah.
I was diagnosed with ADHD. I don't know. Teacher said I was a terror. But when I started doing martial arts, that really helped me find a center. That really helped me channel my energy, just, my focus, just being able to, I don't know, be able to take all the inputs of the world and like just all right, this is the task I'm doing now, and just doing that. In the martial arts, they talked about the whole mind body thing. So when you're performing all these movements, you're doing all these kicks, and you're trying to twist and contort your body in the air and all this stuff. That whole connection between your mind and body, and just getting them in sync, like you're seeing what your body should be doing, and you're trying to go through the motion and like really like fine tune those things. That
fine tune. Hold on. You're starting to sound like a creationist. No, I'm just kidding.
Really? I mean, you were more alike than I thought. No, there was a lot there. It's being able to put to practice repetition and just that connection between your mind and body.
Yeah.
Maybe I mean, I'm only cognizant of so much.
Right.
I realize I have a brain and it's processing all sorts of junk. And I realize I have a body and it's performing these motions, and I realize there's a relationship between the two. Mm-hmm. I don't know if there's more than that in the equation. I just know that these are the particular masses in the mass spring model that I'm wiggling to achieve a certain outcome.
That's good. That's good. The people with the martial arts, usually Asian, and their ideas of like thinking a holistic medicine is totally different, man. Like I'll tell you this, when I went through my separation, we wind up getting married later on, but remarried. But I had like these really, like the week that I left, I had like really bad back problems and stomach problems. So the stress was totally manifesting itself on my body. And I mean, because I think when you scream, whatever, you get like tense, and then the adrenaline and stuff going through. So I told one of my students that I was going through something, and they took me to like an Oriental medicine, and they did like acupuncture and some bloodletting. And so I was there, and like, it's like initially they stab you like, and then they put these suction things on you, and it hurts initially, and then like, man, within like 10 minutes I was sleeping though, so I was out of it. And yeah, it works. So I will definitely vouch for the acupuncture and the acupressure, the herbal remedies and stuff like that. They have like these markets. The Chinese markets might be a little bit, in fact, they probably might have caused the corona, but they have some weird stuff because they eat a lot of unorthodox stuff, like, you know what I mean? But I'm sure some of the stuff is really good as well though. But in Korea, they just have like a bunch of herbal aisles and holistic medicine, you know, because for them, for their thinking is you cannot separate the mind and the body. Like you can't, you have to deal with it either through meditation or through music, relaxation, being out in nature. Like there's a connection there. I could tell you that. I've lived here for 10 years and I've seen it. But what do you think about traditional funerals? Do they make sense in the 21st century? And what I mean very specifically is by like having funeral plots, because as we continue to get bigger, it seems like we're going to start running out of space to bury people, you know? And so it seems kind of an archaic way of doing stuff. But what are your thoughts on that?
My parents bought a house during the housing crisis in 2008, 2009 timeframe. And just behind their backyard are these woods that contain a just forgotten cemetery.
Really?
You can go out there and actually see where the plots have sunken into the ground because the coffins have completely deteriorated. You can be like, yep, there's a body there, there's a body there, there's a body there. My parents love it because they say they have the quietest neighbors.
Oh, God.
My first thought was like, holy crap, that's awful. How can you sleep at night? And then like within a day, I started thinking about it. It's like, man, they're really onto something. Never loud parties.
Hey, you better pray to God that those aren't Indian people buried there or Native Americans, because you're going to run into some serious problems, man. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Terry style, yeah. Well, that can't be the only forgotten cemetery or burial plot.
That is so crazy, dude. If you could send me some pictures and videos, I would actually love to see it. That is fascinating. That is fascinating, honestly.
I think it's super cool. I love going back there, and I would go back there with my dog, just, you know, say, hey, let's go explore the woods. I mean, I grew up doing that stuff. I loved going through the woods and just exploring. The funerals themselves, I'll be honest, I hate them. Mm-hmm. I hate them with a passion. I think they're horrendous.
Why is that?
I think they're a way to make money. So my father, if I had to put him on the Dawkins scale, he'd probably be between a 6 and a 7 as well. Mm-hmm. But I mean, that's if you forced him to a number, because honestly, I just don't think he gave a shit. Out of sight, out of mind, didn't matter. It wasn't worth his brain power. The only reason why approaching his deathbed, he said like, all right, fine, whatever. I think was because he did it for his wife. His wife was scared to death of losing him, knew it was going to happen, was reaching out for anything she could. She latched onto religion. And when the preacher came by and he's like, will you do this to save your soul? And he's like, if it makes my wife happy, sure, whatever. I don't think he gave one iota of crap about what he was saying. He was doing it for his wife. So I was sitting there in the front row and thinking, this is just, no, it wasn't for him. But I understand how he got here. And so going back to what I was saying before, with the whole, I don't know if this is just me watching a bunch of action movies or not, but the whole warrior, just putting the body on a pyre and then lighting it and then just, you know, being left with ashes. To me, that is the simplest, I don't know. I like that. So, the Viking style, just giant bonfire.
Just so you know where I was going with this, I was going more in the direction of burying people in like a mature tree. Like they have like these sacks where you get buried inside so that it springs up with the tree. You never heard of that before?
I haven't, no.
Okay, so yeah, so you get buried with them, as I said, like in a mature tree. So they put it in a sack, and I guess it just dissolves or whatever. So you somewhat become a part of that tree. So for me, that would be a waste if you're getting cremated or, but I don't know. I can understand if you want to get scattered somewhere over the ocean, or I'm not saying that that's wrong. I'm saying I would want to go out in a way that if you plant a tree, rather than going to a graveside, you're able to go to my tree, you know, and maybe put some kind of like, I'm not sure if they do this, but you know, that you could like chisel in the name or something, or maybe put some plaque on it or something. To me, that's where I was going as far as the funeral space, the cemeteries. By the way, I got to tell you this. This is kind of a funny story. So my mom was, you know, she was hardcore believer, and actually the last 6 months of her life, actually, I wasn't even talking to her because she was really upset that I was getting some, like, I got this Egyptian tattoo right here in South Korea, and I put it on MySpace. This is how long ago. It's on MySpace. And someone showed it to her. She got really upset with me, and I told her I didn't believe in Jesus. And then like she died 4 months later on my birthday. It was like tragic, but she used to tell me that she didn't believe in getting cremated, because she's like, well, if you get cremated, she's like, you know, like God, when he comes back, he has to be able to resurrect your body. And if you've been cremated, how is he going to be able to resurrect your body? And I'm like, Mom, if God's coming back to resurrect people who have been dead thousands of years, you think those people still have a body? Like, you think God's gonna have a problem with resurrecting some ashes out there? It's like, it was such a non sequitur for me, you know, that she believed that. But I'm sure you've gone into some like Chinese shops, Chinese restaurant, or some dry cleaners, and they have like shrines and stuff set up for their ancestors.
Sure.
Yeah, I know. I know in the dojos they have like the pictures of their, but I can tell you this, because I live in South Korea. It is a very big deal. I mean, I could send you some pictures. Maybe I'll put some pictures on this video of the level of like they do the ancestral worship here, because one of the things that they do, right? Like, so if you have money, they'll bury you with like a plot of land. No, sorry. They'll bury you in a plot of land, obviously, but they'll make like hills. Okay, so like if you're like not that important, you might just have like a little mound. But if you're like a patriarch or something, you might have like a bigger mound. And if you're king, you're gonna have like something like the size of like a house where you could like literally walk into. And it might be something more like a mausoleum, right? So then they have like, in fact, I'll just show you a few pictures because I was just at one not too long ago. But what do you think about ancestral worship? Do you think that makes sense? from in an evolutionary sense of the word. By the way, just so you know, can you see that right there?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can kind of see how they're stacked up right here, and then they'll put in like shrines. They'll have shrines, and that might be Confucius right there. So yeah, but I will. So that's a better view right there. Can you see that?
Yeah.
From the other side, and I'll show you, like, as again, some of these guys, so in South Korea, you know this fact that South Korea has like the biggest ratio of people being adopted overseas. Like South Koreans will not adopt their own kind. Are you familiar with that?
I was not.
Well, this is one reason why you just see a lot of people, like, they just will not adopt their kind. So you might run into a lot of adoptees, and I ran into a lot of adoptees in America. But point is that one of the reasons why they won't do that is because they like to trace like their lineages and stuff like really far back, hundreds or thousands of years, literally. So it's a really big deal here. And so, but what do you think? Do you think that makes sense inside of atheism?
Probably one area where I may be suffering the most cognitive dissonance, because I absolutely adhere to the idea of honor and doing things right for the sake of doing things right. Not because it has any visibility or because anyone sees it or could attach it to my name, or I mean, honor for honor's sake. I think it's somehow has some connection in my mind to immortality. Like if I can do things without regret, somehow that, I don't know how those connect, but that's what it does for me. And in terms of ancestors, for me, ancestor worship is honoring that. It's like reflecting on that and embracing that and building on that. So, yeah. Like in America, when people are patriotic and proud of what American soldiers have done and fought for in the name of America, for America, to me, that's what it's about. It's about that the whole pursuit of freedom and liberty for its sake. I don't think America's perfect in its execution or pursuit of that. Sometimes I think we dip our toes in the wrong waters, but it's those ideas and those pursuits that they resonate with me. So in terms of the ancestor worship, if when I see people honoring the dead or their family, to me, that's the chord it strikes. And to me, that's the holiest element of it.
Are you familiar with Dia de los Muertos and in Mexico? Day of the Dead? Where they dress up like skeletons? I used to see that growing up, and I thought it was the most like archaic, barbaric thing imaginable. I used to hate seeing that. I was like, these people are animals. And part of that had to do because my parents didn't teach us Spanish because they didn't want us speaking Spanish. They want us to assimilate. So as it is, we're just culturally discouraged from being like Mexican, but so there's that. There's an assimilation element. But part of it's just not being in the mainstream. But part of it was just I didn't understand it at the time. And my grandmother, I was telling you about my grandmother. When she died, my wife was about 7 months pregnant, and the movie Coco came out. You see that movie Coco? It's about Dia de los Muertos. Yeah, you really should watch it. You really. Okay. I make a general rule of not watching cartoons or animation, but this is, wow. I had no idea what. I mean, I cried probably like 5 or 6 times in there. It has to do with generational grandparents and their grandkids, and celebrated. You know, it's like my daughter was getting ready to get born, and my grandmother just died. So imagine I was like a bloody mess in there, crying so much. But
Really related.
what was that?
You really related to it.
Oh God, to the nth degree. But point being is that it's not so much like worshiping them. It's being grateful for what they've gone through. Like anybody who's existed in the last, my grandmother, if you hear what my grandmother grew up in and my dad coming from Mexico here, it just would, like, I cannot relate to that in the slightest sense. My dad had to work in picking, you know, picking fruit growing up, moving around in camps, and with holes in his shoes and having to put she told me I have to put cardboard in his shoes to keep like the water out and stuff. I'll never understand what my parents went through, you know, or our grandparents, or even if you believe in evolution, all that. Just think about the struggle for humanity to survive being out in the elements, the empathy that would have had to have risen to keep watch at night so some people can sleep, and you know, having to fight the woolly mammoth or whatever it is that we're saber-toothed tigers. And there's a lot that went into it, even from disease. And I believe the War of the Worlds movie with Tom Cruise summed it up so beautifully when it talks, you saw that movie?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't want to give away any spoilers, but when the aliens die at the end and they're like, and it might have been Morgan Freeman, I don't know, was it Morgan Freeman?
Voiceover.
Yeah, there's only two people that do voiceovers, Morgan Freeman or James Earl Jones. They get like all the acting gigs, but he's like, and I'm gonna butcher this, but it's like mankind, all their losses, and the aliens just good, you know, just talking about the struggle. Like I can appreciate that because I positively believe that, but those who have gone before us, and like, we're so lucky, we're so fortunate to be here, where we have technology, where we have clean water. I mean, I've been drinking water this whole time, but clean water, you know, there's a lot of people who didn't have that before us, and they struggled with it for us to be here. So I think by acknowledging, not worship, I don't believe in I only worship God, but by acknowledging that and paying homage and you know, living. One of the questions was, how do we live? Like, you know, to the best is like, acknowledge that, understand not everybody has had what we've had. So like, take full advantage of it, you know, appreciate the life. Yeah. You got any last thoughts, brother?
I mean, I could like pick any one of those things and delve deeper.
Or we could do round two.
I'd be up for round two.
Yeah, actually, I told you I'd normally have an atheist co-host, but the co-host actually, he had to take his mom into the hospital. Oh, so he got in very late. So yeah, he had to cancel the day. So, but you know, we could always do round two. I don't like to do more than 3 people. I like to keep it to about 3 so we could have a good, you know, I'm not sure if you've ever seen they'll have like 8 people come on and like everyone gets to talk for like 2 minutes, and like, what's the point of that? You know, I really wanted to get to examine what people are saying. Did you enjoy yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely.
Was this a more enjoyable experience than the first one?
Yeah. And any time when you don't have to resort to attacks and whatnot, or defending positions you never took. Yeah, no, absolutely. Right. It was extremely enjoyable, and I liked the questions. They were very thought-provoking.
You drink Starbucks?
Yeah,
that's what we do. We send out Starbucks cards to all of our guests, so we'll send you one of those in your email. And really want to thank you for your time. I will say this, usually end off with some soliloquies, so I will say this, that regardless where we're falling on the spectrum, like loss is going to hurt us. Like, I don't care, your father died, I'm a Christian, I wasn't a Christian when my mom died. That stung. It has, I would be a liar to say I've recovered 100% from that. I believe that my mom is watching down on me, but she never got to meet my daughter. The only way my mom still lives on is by the things that I can tell my daughter now. So these things are going to affect us either side, and we all have to struggle with our own mortality. And I think just recognizing that about each other, like recognizing the frailty that we have. If I put a gun to your head and shoot you, you're going to die the same way that I'm going to die. Like, we're going to bleed the same color. I deprive you from oxygen for 5 minutes, you're going to die just as quickly as me. So understanding at the end of the day, we're all like, we're all on this rock together. So let's just try to respect each other and try to understand that we're not always going to have each other. I guess that's what I'm trying to say, is that in 50 years, we may not be able to have this conversation. Maybe all of our teeth will be gone. Maybe we can't even see the computer screen. Who knows what could happen 5 days from now? I'm saying 50 years. You don't know if 50 hours from now I'll be here, you'll be here. So let's just try to respect each other and try to help out each other as we're on this journey. So that being said, I want to thank you for joining us today. Don't forget to visit our website at www.rhepodcast.com or subscribe to our channel at YouTube. We're on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, just about you name it, we're on it. So leave us a comment below if you like this episode, or if there's something you'd like us to talk about in the future, or maybe come on as a guest. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you back again. Goodbye.
Hey, it's Lois.